Tang tang namassami harisavanam patavim pabhasam tayan jaguntavi hare udivasam yim brahmena vedagu sambudhame te me namo te chamam bhadayantu namantu buddhanam namantu bodhiyam namo vibuddhanam namo vibuddhiyam imam so
Good evening. Good, radiant smiles. Always like to see that. I'll try not to move around too much. I've had complaints that when I adjust my robes, it just goes like on the recording, so I have to be very still. So judging by the smiles, everything is pretty okay. Good, good. So as you guessed, I will begin talking tonight. Delson and I will do another little collaboration. We discussed about the retreat and how it was going. And I mentioned that there were a few things that would be probably worthwhile discussing because in every retreat, it seems like something kind of special happens. There's a kind of a harmonizing of the minds. And there's always, I would say, a good amount of people that go through the same stages at the same time, it seems, and experience very similar experiences. So, and we've noticed a few resonances here, and so we were thinking about addressing a few of those stages and how to actually even deepen our experience and what can get in the way, basically. So tonight I'll be speaking about Majjhima Nikaya number 106, the way conducive to steadfastness. And Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this as this is the word. The way to imperturbability. Imperturbability. Ananja Sapaya Sutta.
If I sing the Pali?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Ananja Sapaya Sutta. Ananja means kind of unshakable, unwavering, steadfast. I personally, I will read a translation of mine tonight, so words will be a little bit different probably than what you've heard before. And I call this particular state the steadfast state, or the steadiness, which is basically anything beyond the fourth jhana. It seems like the Buddha, I'm not sure if everybody, there we go. Teruan Saranai. Is Bhante Punit coming? No. Oh, okay. Okay, not coming. Okay. So I was just saying that it seems like every retreat there is kind of a resonance in the minds, and many people seem to go through similar stages at the same time for some reason. And it happens pretty much every retreat. And so tonight, I will be addressing that, and Delson and I will be cooperating. And so I will be reading Majjhima Nikaya 106, Ananjapaya Sutta, Sapaya Sutta. And I apologize for opening up a computer in front of you. I don't know if some people will be shocked, but everything I have teaching-wise is in Canada, in Maikuti, and so it's somewhat far and difficult to carry. So just carrying a computer is much easier and simpler for everybody. So, and thanks to Wood who brought this. See, I just put it upside down. More books?
More books, more goodies.
Was this announced, or I think Bhante Swaminathan brought this, yes, from Katukurunda Ānanda, Bhikkhu, Bhante, Concept and Reality, very profound book on dependent origination, Nama Rupa, if you want to dig in your brain a little bit. Very profound academic. Is it something I should say, or?
No, I want to see how many copies are there. So there's 10 plus 10.
Oh, okay.
Should be enough.
Okay. So I guess before we get started, a few of the points that I'll be inclining towards reading this talk, because this talk could be interpreted for many kind of parts of the practice, but mainly this will be directed at how to actually deepen awareness even past neither perception or non-perception, which is a place where a lot of people are right now experiencing, and still mind, clear awareness, clear mind, and how it works with sitting a little bit longer, allowing more time for mind to settle down. And this is a really good sutta that kind of nudges this kind of understanding along. So, and there were other things, but they'll just come back to me when I get talking. So here we are. This is when the Awakened One was living with the Kurus in a town called Kamma Sadhamma. And the Awakened One addressed the monks saying, "Monks, Bhante," the monks replied. The Awakened One said this. First, I would like to ask my elders' permission. Thank you. Monks, sensory gratification is fleeting, hollow, deceptive, the way of thieves. It is a makeshift illusion, the mutterings of those who are lost. Sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come. Sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come. Both alike belong to the realm of the unwholesome. And here I put unwholesome in bracket because I'm from the western side of civilization, and the word Mara. Mara is a concept that is not always very welcome or accepted, well acknowledged. So I just change it as the unwholesome here, but you can also change that for Mara. That's the actual translation here. So it is the realm of Mara, which isn't much more positive, but It is the domain of the unwholesome, the bait of the unwholesome, the pasture of the unwholesome. So basically, like you will see with Delson's talk afterwards, it's not the things of the world that are the problem, but it holds the potential to become a problem. So it depends on what we do with it. That's why it's like the field, it's the realm, but so we have the choice what happens with that. This is where harmful, unwholesome mental states like jealousy, resentment, and violence are given rise. And these constitute an obstacle for the wise meditator in training. Therefore, monks, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come, sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come. Both alike belong to the realm of the unwholesome. They are Mara's domain, Mara's bait, Mara's pasture. This is where our harmful, unwholesome mental states like jealousy, resentment, and violence are given rise. And these constitute an obstacle for the wise meditator in training. Now we're just beginning the meditation. We're just learning how to deal with the coarser hindrances. Basically, that's where it starts. Now the first instruction we're going to see 3 instructions to the way to the steadfast state, and this is the first. Perhaps could I meditate with a vast and completely expanded mind, having gone beyond the world with a resolved mind. For if I were to meditate with a completely expanded mind, having gone beyond the world with a resolved intention, harmful, unwholesome mental states of jealousy, resentment, and violence would not come to be. And when the Buddha talks about the world, he's talking about the 6 senses, because the world is nothing but the 6 senses. This is how we know this. Those being given up, my mind will be unenclosed, limitless, and well developed. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. With this clear and serene awareness, one arrives at the steadfast at that time. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. And it is possible that if their consciousness rolls onwards, it goes into the steadfast state. Monks, this is called the first way conducive to the steadfast. So you can probably recognize the practice of the Brahma Viharas here with the boundless cultivation of the mind, basically, which is what we've been doing. The next 2 they are variables that can attain the same state, but usually the Buddha tends to begin with the Brahma Viharas, like we can see in the Maharahula, the great advice to his son, Rahula. Rahula basically asks for instructions on meditation on the breath, Anapanasati, because Sariputta Bhante recommends this meditation. And he goes to the Buddha, and the Buddha says, no, Rahula, you should begin with, well, there's a whole preamble to this, but he says you should begin with radiating loving kindness, and then compassion, and then joy, and then equanimity, and then develop some detachment towards what is attractive, and then develop perception of impermanence, and then you should practice Anapanasati. So at that time, the Venerable Rahula is probably one of the youngest members of the Sangha. He's beginning his path, and this is a wonderful sutta where we can see that this is probably what the Buddha used as a main strategy from the beginning up until someone is ready to practice deeper with Anapanasati, something like that. So, and this is what we're doing here. We're beginning with the Brahma Viharas and going all the way and seeing the limit of each of those Brahmic states and the way beyond. And this is like the highway. This is, it makes the mind very, very wholesome from the very beginning. And it makes sure that everybody has a very wholesome basis to start from. And then afterwards, there's much less problems. Where there could be a lot of distractions arising from, let's say, just going too quickly into Satipatthana practice or things like that are more neutral, less active. And now we're gonna speak about another kind of meditation that is about the four elements. Further, monks, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come. Sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come. Those things are material, and all things material belong to the four elements. One who is attached to matter is merely holding on to the four elements. And see, this is slowly detaching from the rupa to the arupa. So basically that's what the steadfast is beyond the fourth jhana. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. With this clear and serene awareness, one arrives at the steadfast at that time. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. And it is possible that if their consciousness rolls onward, it goes into the steadfast state. Monks, this is called the second way conducive to the steadfast. And now a little bit of anicca sanya, a little bit of contemplating impermanence, which can also lead us to a similar state. Sensory, further, monks, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come. Sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come. And this just means engaging in all things that we could do with this world of the six senses. Matter here and now, and matter that is to come. Material perceptions here and now, and material perceptions that are to come. Both alike are constantly changing. And for what is constantly changing, it is not reasonable to become excited for it, to look forward to it, and to remain attached. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. With this clear and serene awareness, one arrives at the steadfast at that time. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. And it is possible that if their consciousness rolls onward, it goes into the steadfast state, which would be a rebirth in that plane of existence, basically. Monks, this is called the third way conducive to the steadfast. And even though the name of this sutta is called The Way to the Steadfast, we're going to go beyond. So here we're going to go through a few of the arupa jhanas. They're not all there. So the Buddha doesn't always teach everything the same way. But it's always really good to have different perspectives, because this is really nourishing our practice whenever you're going to go back home, or whenever you have maybe perhaps the right causes and conditions arise for you to see that one of these particular topics would be very helpful and would help deepening your meditation, then it's wonderful. You can totally use that as a support. So now we're going to speak a bit about a plane that I call bare awareness, but that's my own translation for nothingness. Basically, it's simply this nothingness is very much true. It's very it's quite accurate. I'm just trying to remember the Pali. I have a blank. Akinchana, ayatana, akinchana, the plane of akinchana. But akincha is something that is rid of all possessions. So it can mean nothing, no thing, akincha. But I just like that kind of bare awareness. There's a few of you actually have said the same words without knowing, but being aware of awareness itself, this is that plane, the state of nothingness, clear mind, basically. Further, monks, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come, sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come, matter here and now, and matter that is to come, material perceptions here and now, or material perceptions that are to come, and perception of the steadfast state. All of these are only just perceptions. Where these perceptions are completely given up, that is peaceful, that is sublime, that is the plane of bare awareness, or the plane of nothingness, clear mind. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. So here, this is where I'd like to kind of underline this, practicing in this way and often meditating in this way. And this is a passage that comes back every single instruction in the sutta. And that really points out to, of course, here we are on the retreat. There he's teaching monks. Monks they have left everything, and so every day they're doing this. But here, this is your time to shine. And so this is your monastic birth and striving. So here, this is why I've been telling quite a few people to try to extend a little bit their sit, just to see without forcing, because many of these states that we're going to talk about from here on only happen with much more time spent meditating. So we usually would be talking about, before this we would be talking about maybe an hour and a half sit, for it to be very clear, for the mind to start to really feel comfortable in that base and be ready to see deeper, actually. Because this is a process of seeing deeper, like Delson will be reading later. And so to go beyond the plane of bare awareness and to neither perception or non-perception, which I also call the plane between awareness and its release or its limit, we usually speak about 2.5, 3 hours sits. And the way beyond that, even, it's not rare that Bhante Vimal-Ramsey would make people sit out of compassion, out of such great compassion actually, sit for 4 or 5 hours in a chair so that it's manageable and nobody gets hurt. And there are very specific teachings that we can use to actually understand feelings that arise, which will be the second part of this discourse. and how to actually really get deeper. And this comes as such a blessing, because these little impediments that arise that make us kind of stand up and break our sit, they are simply the mind basically reacting to a sensation, a feeling tone. And there's a little bit of dislike, there's a little bit of agitation, and there's a little bit of tension. But there's a way to soothe the pain, there's a way to soothe the mind even deeper, and to be like, you know what, mind, it's okay. It's okay, mind. It'll be fine. And just to be compassionate, to relax, and to allow the pain to be, and to actually relax that pain. And very often, meditator will break through that, and they will understand it was only mental, basically, and that the only thing that was keeping them from going deeper was just to let go of this mental barrier. And then there's just even more happiness and smiling. So monks, this is called the first way conducive to the plane of bare awareness, or nothingness. And now we're gonna speak about a meditation on anatta. And some of you have been asking about, is there ways to develop anatta that I can actually understand? Well, the Buddha actually taught meditation practices around that and ways of understanding. Further, monks, a wise meditator goes to the forest, at the root of a tree, or to an empty cabin, and understands this is empty of a self, or anything that belongs to a self. Practicing in this way, and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm, and with this clear and serene awareness, one experiences the plane of bare awareness at that time. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. It is possible that their consciousness rolls onwards and arrives at the plane of bare awareness. And when I say one is directly liberated by discernment, doesn't mean that they become an arahant, but it means that they are liberated from, to such an extent, by discernment, basically. Monks, this is called the second way conducive to the plane of bare awareness. The end of possessions. Now this is a third way to enter this particular state. And you will see these ways of, three ways are attaining this state, but there are also three characteristics of the states that are quite palpable when one is in that state. Further, monks, a wise meditator understands, I do not belong to anyone anywhere, nor is there anything belonging to me anywhere at all. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. And with this clear and serene awareness, one experiences the plane of bare awareness at that time. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. And it is possible that their consciousness rolls onwards and arrives at the plane of bare awareness. Monks, this is called the second way conducive to bare awareness. And now we speak on, I think there's 2 or 3 again, instructions on neither perception or non-perception, how to enter that, and what does that mean. And this state I call the limit of awareness, or the plane between awareness and its release or its limit. Further, monks, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come. Sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come. Matter here and now, or matter that is to come. Material perceptions here and now, and material perceptions that are to come. The perception of the steadfast and the perception of the plane of bare awareness All of these are only just perceptions. Does that sound familiar? Did I say this to you on an interview? So many things arise in that state usually, and the way to understand this, and this is where I take this from, is that it's only just perception. So that we don't make up more of them, they just arise. We let them, the causes and conditions for them are ripe for them to arise, and the mind is kind of getting more simple. This is a thing that happens a lot at the beginning, maybe the first few retreats, or before experiencing Nirodha more than once. The mind has to go through a kind of a cleansing process at that level, neither perception or non-perception. It's going to be very deeply subtle. How do you call them? The precognitions?
Oh yeah, the proto-thoughts.
The proto-thoughts. But not only, I think it's even before the proto-thoughts are just, some of you will have been seeing lights, geometrical patterns, whatever it is, like flashes. These are just, they're arising because mind is so used to being active. It's just, that's all it knows what to do at this point. And this is at the most subtle layers of the mind. And so it's just arising. It doesn't matter what it is, it's just perceptions, basically. So that we don't actually cling to that. We're not heavied or burdened by these perceptions. We just let them slip. Let them flow. Now, where these perceptions are completely given up, that is peaceful, that is sublime, that is the plane between awareness and its release, neither perception or non-perception. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. So here, see, already to get to this stage, it usually takes quite a bit of dedication, and now he's saying, do it even more. So really going without forcing anything, but actually relaxing into release. Practicing in this way and often meditating in this way, the mind becomes clear and calm. With this clear and serene awareness, one experiences the plane between awareness and its release. Separating from the body after death, one is directly liberated by discernment. It is possible that their consciousness rolls onwards and arrives at the plane between awareness and its limit. Monks, this is called the first way conducive to the plane between awareness and its release. Well, actually, I was wrong. I think there's only one. Yeah, only one. Now going straight to Nibbana. I know, why wait? Now, when this was said, the Venerable Ānanda asked the Buddha, Bhante, if a monk practices like this, thinking, there is nothing and nothing of me, there will not be anything nor will I be. All of that which is, I am giving up. Thus one gains steadiness of mind. Could some monks here be completely liberated and some others not? Interesting question. It is possible, Ānanda, but Bhante, what is the cause? What is the reason for this? Here, Ānanda, one practices in this way, thinking, there is nothing and nothing of me. There will not be anything, nor will I be. All of that which is, I am giving up. Thus one gains steadiness of mind. Then one takes pleasure in it and looks forward to it and remains attached to it. When one takes pleasure in it, looks forward to it, and remains attached to this steady mental calm, does anybody have an idea why somebody would get attached to that? Because it feels awesome. Good answer. Because it feels peaceful, very peaceful. Yes, exactly. Relief, wouldn't it be? Yes. And someone just relishes in that state, which is very good. In a way. One's mind remains dependent upon it by clinging. Ānanda, one with clinging is not completely liberated. But Bhante, what does one's mind then clings to? Fairly good question. To the plane between awareness and its release, Ānanda. Bhante, this surely must be the best kind of clinging. So I think some of you are in tune with that. Surely, Ānanda, this is the best kind of clinging, namely the plane between awareness and its limit. Because there's barely any clinging at all, and mine is almost completely released. So this is very much the crown jewel of clinging, if there is a crown jewel to clinging. Here, Ānanda, one practices in this way thinking, there is nothing and nothing of me. And by the way, this is translated in many different ways. I'm not saying that my translation is better than others, so, but I like this particular format. For me, it resonates. There will not be anything, nor will I be. All of that which is, I am giving up. Thus one gains steadiness of mind. Then one takes no pleasure in it, does not look forward to it, and does not remain attached to it. And see, that doesn't mean that it's not pleasant anymore. Bhante. So that doesn't mean it's not pleasant anymore, but this is when we were talking about the ice cream bowls, I think. That was the simile of the ice cream bowls.
Yes, that's right. Simile of the ice cream bowl.
And dispassion. So when we, like it is said in the sutta, when we practice this over and over again, and we spend a lot of time, welcome, and we spend a lot of time in this state, and then we're a bit stuck, and we kind of like we wonder how to go deeper, because it seems like there's a release beyond that, but we're kind of stuck in there. But as we release and release and release and relax and release and relax and learn to acquire more confidence and more steadiness in that base, and the mind starts to kind of soak in it more and starts to understand, okay, so this is how it works, and this is how I got here, and this is how to go deeper. This is what I need to let go, because here the thing that needs to be let go of is the I-ness, this thing that pops in and say, hey, I'm here. And then it just wrecks it. And then it's like, what just happened? Wow, that was cool. I wonder, like, can I do that again? Oh, this happy feelings feels pretty good. And then it starts talking a little bit. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't become pleasant or relieving anymore, but it's just, as we were speaking before, we just start to become a little bit more detached towards it. It's like, yeah, I know now how it works. I know you're going to come up and say, hey, and I'll just keep relaxing and not lower my level of interest in putting too much energy and interest in wanting to know all the time, and I want to everything. So we just develop a bit of more dispassion or just calm detachment from it. When one takes no pleasure in it, does not look forward to it, and does not remain attached to that steady mental calm, one's mind is independent from it because of not clinging. So now there's nothing that can bring back the I-ness, the beingness, the hey, I'm there-ness. Ānanda, one without clinging, is completely liberated. How wonderful, Bhante! How incredible, Bhante! Surely, Bhante, the awakened one has explained the crossing of the flood from one support to the next. Bhante, now, what is the unbinding of the Aryas? And this is in Pali, Katamopanna Bhante Aryo Vimukkoti. Here, Ānanda, a wise meditator understands sensory gratification here and now, or sensory gratification that is to come, sensory perceptions here and now, or sensory perceptions that are to come, matter here and now, and matter that is to come, material perception here and now, and material perceptions that are to come. Now pay attention here, it's quite profound. The perception of the steadfast, the perception of the plane of bare awareness, and the perception of the plane between awareness and its release. This is personality as far as personality goes. But this is the deathless Ānanda, namely the unbinding of the mind through not clinging. Thus, Ānanda, I have explained the path conducive to the steadfast, the path conducive to the plane of bare awareness, the path conducive to the plane between awareness and its release, the path to crossing the flood from one support to the next, and the unbinding of the Aryas, the awakened people. Ānanda, what should be done by a teacher for his students, holding their best interest at heart, out of loving compassion, that I have done for you now. There are these roots of trees, monks. There are these empty huts. Meditate, monks. Do not be neglectful, lest you become remorseful when the time has passed. This is my advice to you. This is what the awakened one said. With an uplifted mind, the Venerable Ānanda delighted in the awakened one's word. So this is personality as far as personality goes. Even in the deepest stages of the meditation, where there's only this I-ness, or this, even saying I is too coarse to describe it, is just being aware of awareness, basically. And it's very still. And slowly it starts to, we understand that there's a little bit of tension in there. If you look, just lean in towards it and just check in, and you'll see it's kind of tensed. And so from there, I think you all know what to do. So you release and relax, and this awareness, this I-ness, it kind of becomes blurry. It doesn't really, there's not enough substance there to kind of hold it together. And so it kind of just goes out a little bit, like you would put out the flame on the candle. And that's the analogy for Nibbana, actually. So I will ask my friend Delson to please explain to us a little bit further.
How about this?
About your sutta.
Okay.
Yes. And I think, and this is, this will be a deeper, well, I guess, penetration. So definitely, this penetrative discourse. So a deeper understanding to perhaps a blockage that is very common at that level is how to see bodily sensations that make us stand up all of a sudden for no reason. And how to actually deal with that, and how to develop the samadhi, the right understanding concerning those. So, Delson, that is your time. Thank you.
So I'm going to be reading from two suttas actually, just as a reference, because what I want to discuss is an elaboration of what Bhante Ānanda has been talking about for the practice, but also that this practice isn't just on the cushion. It is also in daily life. How do you apply the practice in daily life? And that is the application of the Eightfold Path. So the sutta I'm reading from is Anguttara Nikaya 6.63. This is called the Penetrative Discourse. And I'm going to be referring to Majjhima Nikaya 117, which discusses the Eightfold Path. So you have a good understanding of that. Because that is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. How do you let go of clinging, even clinging to any jhana, clinging to any of the arupa states? How do you let go of the highest clinging? That is through letting go. And there is a way of letting go, which is facilitated through the Eightfold Path. So when we talk about samadhi means right view. That right view is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So when you come to samadhi, you have an understanding of the Four Noble Truths. First, you understand what is the First Noble Truth, which is generally understood as suffering. You fully abandon the causes and conditions for that suffering, and you experience and realize for yourself the complete cessation of suffering. And you do that through the cultivation and development of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. These are the Four Noble Truths. But the Four Noble Truths can be understood as a formula that you can apply for anything. The Four Noble Truths are a way of understanding how to see what is present if it is causing suffering, how to let that go and experience the cessation of suffering, and what to do to let it go. So I'll begin and then we will read on. Bhikkhus, I will teach you a penetrative exposition of the Dhamma. Listen and attend closely, I will speak. Yes, Bhante, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this, and what, bhikkhus, is that penetrative exposition of the Dhamma? Sensual pleasures should be understood. The source and origin of sensual pleasures should be understood. The diversity of sensual pleasures should be understood. The result of sensual pleasures should be understood. The cessation of sensual pleasures should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of sensual pleasures should be understood. Feelings should be understood. The source and origin of feelings should be understood. The diversity of feelings should be understood. The result of feelings should be understood. The cessation of feelings should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of feelings should be understood. Perceptions should be understood. The source and origin of perceptions should be understood. The diversity of perceptions should be understood. The result of perceptions should be understood. The cessation of perceptions should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of perceptions should be understood. The taints should be understood. The source and origin of the taints should be understood. The diversity of the taints should be understood. The result of the taints should be understood. The cessation of the taints should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of the taints should be understood. Karma should be understood. The source and origin of karma should be understood. The diversity of karma should be understood. The result of karma should be understood. The cessation of karma should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of karma should be understood. Suffering should be understood. The source and origin of suffering should be understood. The diversity of suffering should be understood. The result of suffering should be understood. The cessation of suffering should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of suffering should be understood. So here is the general summation of the things the Buddha is going to be talking about. First and foremost, he says, when it was said sensual pleasures should be understood, the source and origin of sensual pleasures should be understood. The diversity of sensual pleasures should be understood. The result of sensual pleasures should be understood. The cessation of sensual pleasures should be understood. The way leading to the cessation of sensual pleasures should be understood. For what reason was this said? There are, bhikkhus, these 5 objects of sensual pleasure. Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, pleasing, connected with sensual pleasure, tantalizing. Sounds cognizable by the ear. Odors cognizable by the nose. Tastes cognizable by the tongue. Tactile objects cognizable by the body. That are wished for, desired, agreeable, pleasing, connected with sensual pleasure, tantalizing. However, listen carefully, however, these are not sensual pleasures. There are forms cognizable by the eye. There are sounds cognizable by the ear. Odors cognizable by the nose. Tastes or flavors cognizable by the tongue, and tangibles cognizable by the body. These are the sense-based objects, but they in of themselves are not sensual pleasure. In the Noble One's discipline, these are called objects of sensual pleasure. A person's sensual pleasure is lustful intention. The experience itself is not the sensual pleasure. It is the intention to take it personally. The intention to say, this is me, this is mine, this is myself. And from there, the intention to grasp onto it. That is the sensual pleasure. On the flip side of that, that could also be sensual aversion. From that sense of me, mine, myself, the mind says this affects me in a painful way. And so it pushes it away. But the basis for this is identification. Even with a neutral feeling, a neutral experience, there can still be a sense of identification with that experience. And so then the Buddha goes into verse and he says, they are not sensual pleasures, the pretty things in the world. They are not the sensual pleasures. A person's sensual pleasure is lustful intention rooted in craving, rooted in taking things personally, rooted in aversion. The pretty things remain just as they are in the world. Whether you attach a sense of self to it or not, that experience remains as it is. It is the mind that takes it personally. And it is the mind that causes itself suffering through that craving intention. But the wise remove the desire for them. So if you recognize that the mind is taking this experience personally, now let's even go forward and say taking the jhana personally, and saying this jhana is me, mine, or myself. You can recognize that, let that go, and just relax into the jhana. Allow things to be as they are. Same with any sensual experience. The pretty things of this world will remain as they are. The painful things of this world will remain as they are. But it is the intention to take it personally and say, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, that makes it something more than it actually is. This is what is meant when one sees earth in relation to earth, conceives of a self in relation to earth, water, fire, and air, space, consciousness, infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. In relation to it, there is a self. In relation to it, there is a grasping. But if you just allow it to be as it is, then the experience continues. But that sense of self, that sense of personal self to the experience goes away, disappears. And what, bhikkhus, is the source and origin of sensual pleasures? Contact is their source and origin. You can't experience anything without contact, phassa, sparsha. The initial stimulation of the eye with the form, the arising of that giving rise to eye consciousness. These three constitute eye contact. Likewise with the other sense bases. That contact, that initial spark, gives rise to feeling. That feeling, if taken personally, with the underlying tendencies towards craving, towards aversion, towards ignorance, towards doubt, towards view, towards conceit, towards becoming, and towards, oh, that's it. That's 7, isn't it? Just testing. Huh? Yeah, I said conceit, yeah. Towards becoming and towards conceit. So those are the 7. Okay, good. So when those underlying tendencies arise, dependent upon the quality of the feeling. If it's a painful feeling, if it's a pleasant feeling, the mind sees that, says, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, grasps onto it, and then there is craving, or pushes it away, and there is aversion. So contact is the key here. Contact is what gives rise to the feeling, and from that feeling there can arise craving or aversion, the sensual pleasures. the lustful intentions. And what is the diversity of sensual pleasures? Sensual desire for forms is one thing. Sensual desire for sounds is one thing. Sensual desire for odors, still another. Sensual desires for tastes, still another. And sensual desire for tactile objects, still another. This is called the diversity of sensual pleasures, right? That makes sense. The desire for any of these different objects. This is the diversity of those sensual desires, sensual pleasures. And what is the result of sensual pleasures? One produces an individual existence that corresponds with whatever sense pleasures one desires, which may be the consequence either of merit or demerit. This is called the result of sensual pleasures. So the result is one takes it personally, creates an individual existence. There is a bhava, an inclination to wanting to become, wanting to possess, wanting to have and hold. And then that individual existence comes to be based on previous causes and conditions, that is old karma. So the old karmic momentum continues based on merit or demerit, wholesome karma or unwholesome karma. Here we're talking about wholesome and unwholesome karma in terms of the effect of previous choices. Those choices, if acted upon with a sense of self, will cause the mind to incline into a new habitual tendency, from which the mind acts and then creates suffering. What is the cessation of sensual pleasures? With the cessation of contact, there is cessation of sensual pleasures. How do you cease contact? How is contact ceased? That is the cessation, nirodha. But I'm saying, how does that happen? I'm not talking about in the meditation. I'm talking about in daily life, how does contact cease?
Got the same dog.
Huh?
Got the same dog, sense dog. It's a dog.
Don't look at anything. Don't hear anything, don't look at anything, don't smell anything, don't taste anything. 6 hours? Remove the eye? Like remove the eye? Remember what contact is. Yes. Remember what contact is. Contact is the joining of these three: eye, form, and eye consciousness. If there is no eye consciousness, there won't be eye contact. How does the eye consciousness arise, or where does it go? It goes dependent upon Namarupa. Namarupa is specifically within Namarupa, attention. Where you put your attention to, their consciousness will flow. So, the cessation of your attention to that object is a cessation of your desire for that object. Here I see a glass of water. I feel thirsty. Let's say that's a natural inclination, thirst. But let's just say that thirst is the craving for some kind of object. If I see that object, there arises this thirst, which is literally tanha. Tanha is thirst. And now I want to grab onto this water. And then there is an individual existence. There is a bhava which says, I am going to drink this water. And now I drink it. And now I have produced an action that results in my thirst being quenched. But in that process, that thirst, when we talk about as tanha, as sensual craving, if you act upon it, what happens? It only adds to that repository of craving, to that repository of karma. Now I could close my eyes and not see the glass of water, and thereby my attention doesn't go there. Or I could just divert my attention somewhere else. That diversion of attention, what is that dependent upon? Mindfulness, but that mindfulness, how does that mindfulness arise? Intention, inclination. You incline your mind away from that object of desire. So, 6 R's. You recognize there is a sensual desire. You release your attention from that. Bring it back to mind and body. Relax the tightness and tension. Come back to the smile. Come back to your object of meditation. Cessation of contact means cessation specifically of consciousness being directed to that experience, to that object. In daily life, Nirodha is another thing in meditation, but we're talking about how do you experience that cessation of suffering, cessation of contact in your daily life. By paying attention to your intention, and then by using your intention to change your attention.
So one could also use, it's empty.
Yeah.
Or it's impermanent.
Right. Because what's going on there is you have replaced that attention towards that as something to desire, and now the attention is on seeing the impermanence of it. The attention is now given to seeing the emptiness of it, or the dukkha aspect of it, whatever it might be.
And you feel that the 6 R's actually might be more effective because you're then cultivating.
Yeah, you're doing a 2-step process, really. Yeah. Taking away the whole unwholesome, replacing it with the wholesome. That's really That's the foundation of Buddhist practice, or the Dhamma, is to replace unwholesome states with wholesome states.
Because I practiced a lot, it's empty, it's impermanent, and then it gets kind of dry.
Yeah.
You know? It stops there.
Yeah.
So replacing it with the wholesome thought, it's like replenishes.
Yes.
the heart.
Yes. There is a statement by R. Buckminster Fuller. I might have mentioned this before, but there's a statement by R. Buckminster Fuller, which is a very, very profound statement, if I can remember it. He says, "You do not change the existing reality by fighting it. Instead, you put a new model in its place, so that the old one becomes obsolete." So this is what the process is. You're replacing the old model of the unwholesome with a new model of the wholesome. When the mind gravitates towards the wholesome, there is no attention given to the unwholesome. It becomes obsolete. We now are, we have these smartphones, we have these iPhones and Android phones with all kinds of capabilities and 16 megapixel cameras and all of that. When's the last time you thought about that old little brick of a phone that was the Nokia cell phone? When was the last time you thought about it? Maybe just now. Because the old model is obsolete, the new model is in its place. Likewise, when you replace the old model of craving with wisdom, you replace the unwholesome with the wholesome, then the unwholesome is forgotten, is let go of, the remainderless fading away.
But withdrawing attention is important. The first thing.
What's that?
First thing is withdrawing our attention is more important.
Withdrawing your attention.
Our attention.
No, not withdrawing your attention.
Otherwise, same thing I will incline towards the first one.
It's about changing your attention, inclining your attention away from that to something else.
Before changing, I should withdraw.
You should?
I should withdraw my attention towards the first one.
How will you withdraw it?
Intention,
Okay, and then what happens after that?
and I go for the
Yeah, but what I'm not talking about we're not talking about withdrawing the attention. We're talking about moving the attention, changing it, right? So replacing it, the object of the attention is replaced from the unwholesome to the wholesome. So withdrawing, in that case, you could say releasing the attention. This is in the second R of the 6 R steps. Recognizing that your attention is on the unwholesome, releasing your attention, taking your attention away from that, then relaxing the tightness and tension, which is the craving. Then bringing that attention to something wholesome, like the smile, and then the object of meditation. So, how do you cease contact? We just talked about it, the 6 R's, right? Right effort. The Noble Eightfold Path, this Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of sensual pleasures, namely right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now let's go deep into what each of these factors of the Eightfold Path are. There is the mundane path factors, and there is the supramundane path factors. So now we'll get into that, which is in, well, I lost it. There we go. Majjhima Nikaya 117. That is Mahachattarisaka Sutta, the Great 40. So, the Buddha says, therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong view as wrong view and right view as right view. This is one's right view. So initially, the first aspect of right view is knowing the difference between what is wrong view and what is right view. Knowing the difference between what is wholesome and unwholesome. So what is wrong view? This is wrong view. There is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, no fruit or result of good and bad actions. No this world, no other world, no mother, no father, no beings who are reborn spontaneously, no good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins in the world who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and the other world. Let's break that apart. What does that mean? Here they're saying there is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, no fruit or result of good and bad actions. So there is no meaning in giving. There is no meaning in expressing generosity. There is no meaning, there is no merit in generosity. Then there is no fruit or result of good and bad actions. Here the wrong view says there's no such thing as karma. There's no action and consequence, no cause and effect. No this world, no other world. Now this is an interesting one. No this world and no other world. What does that mean? No this world, no other world. What is this world? 6 sense bases. We are experiencing everything in this world through the 6 sense bases. What is the other world? They might say that the other world is a Devaloka or a hell realm or this or that. I found a very interesting interpretation of this. No other world can also mean no experience of jhana. Because there is this world, which is the mundane, and there is jhana, which is the supramundane, the other world.
Touches also on that one specific kind of wrong view that was not believing that there's anything after death.
Yeah.
And Buddha says this is a basis for creating the most unwholesome actions.
Yeah, because if there's this view of annihilationism, it says that it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not going to experience the consequences of that. So having that understanding that there are consequences even beyond the death of this life makes the mind very careful in deciding what to do. No mother, no father. Here this is referring to, there's no need to repay our parents. No need to have gratitude for our parents. Our parents allowed us the possibility of birth into this existence with the potential for reaching Nibbana. For that alone, we can be grateful. Let alone they've been abusive, let alone they've shouted at us, let alone they've done all of these things. It's not a justification for their abuse, but an understanding of no need to hate our parents, no need to blame our parents. Right? That's a very immature way of acting. Blaming, putting the blame on someone else, especially our parents. I'm like this because my father was like this. I'm like this because my mother was like this, or because my mother said this when I was 14 years old. Right? So letting go of all of that and understanding our parents allowed us possibility of coming into this life with the potential to attain Nibbana. For that, just be happy. No ill will against them. At the very least, the Buddha has talked about how it's impossible to repay the debt that we owe to our parents. No beings who are reborn spontaneously. This is the possibility, the potential for rebirth to happen. Again, this is talking about the fact that there is no intermediate stage. As soon as there is the dissolution of one life, there is the arising of the next life, dependent upon those causes and conditions. So the idea is not that you need to believe in rebirth. It's not like you have to say that I have some kind of conceptual faith in rebirth, but the willingness and openness to say, okay, what does that mean? How does that happen? If you close off the possibility of rebirth, if you have a closed-minded view, then you haven't fully developed this mundane right view. Allow the mind to be open and investigate for oneself, to see for oneself what is the reality of that. Good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins in the world who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and the other world. So the idea that there are people who have walked this path and possibly even perfected this path and are able to actually guide the way, one way or the other. But if you don't believe in that, then why do anything at all? Then what's the point? If there are not people who have actually experienced the fruit of this practice, then what's the point of doing this? So then the right view is the opposite of that. That is to say, there's the two right views, the mundane and the supramundane. The mundane is the right view that is affected by the taints, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisitions. What does that mean? Ripening in the acquisitions, partaking of merit, productive of karma, productive of new karma through that process. And that mundane right view is basically the opposite. There is what is given and what is offered and what is sacrificed. There is meaning in giving, meaning in generosity. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. There is karmic consequence. There is this world and the other world. There is mother and father. There are beings who are reborn spontaneously. There are in the world good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and the other world. This is the right view affected by taints, partaking of merit and ripening in the acquisitions. What is the right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path? The wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the investigation of states, enlightenment factor, the path factor of right view in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right view that is noble, taintless, and supramundane. Having this right view is non-productive of new karma. So first, the foundation is to have your view straight, of knowing what is wrong view and what is right view, and then having these other aspects of understanding generosity, the meaning in giving, the karmic consequences, the gratitude for one's parents, so on and so forth. And then from there arises wisdom. What is wisdom? Vidya, right? This wisdom, the power of wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the investigation of states enlightenment factor. What does that mean, investigation of states enlightenment factor? It doesn't mean you need to investigate in that sense. It's discerning. It's the word that Bhante uses. Discernment of what is wholesome and unwholesome. Discernment of what is right view and wrong view. And that wisdom is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. That's it. Coming to that experience of seeing for oneself that this is indeed the path. That is a stream enter. One who has unwaverable, unshakable, experiential confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. That confidence arises from the experience of having some kind of wisdom. Seeing that the Four Noble Truths indeed work in this way. It might not be perfected, but it begins to work in this way.
And how does wisdom arise?
How does wisdom arise? Through Nibbana? By practice. Through direct knowledge. Through direct liberation of the mind.
There's a sutta called Paratubbha Sutta. It's a very, very short sutta. The Buddha says, Paratubbha Sutta, through the voice of another, and Yoniso.
So through the voice of another and through Yoniso Manasikara. Yoniso Manasikara, through attention, proper attention. The voice of another is the voice of the Buddha, or someone who has understood the path.
I just like to, it's just a good thing to remember, because Kalyanamitas come in, and it's not like you can develop wisdom, but also a very big part of it is because right now when we're listening to Dhamma, we're taking it and we're studying Dhamma. It's always the voice of another too. It's quite humbling.
Would you call proper attention direct practice?
Yeah, I mean, if you're practicing with practice, then meditation is kind of sharpening that ability, of course. But then I'm just listening to you speaking, and I'm just thinking, like, this is exactly how we gather wisdom. Listening to these thoughts, like the Chachaka Sutta, it's like you're breaking down experience, and it's all slowly coming together and piecing itself together, and at some point you kind of have to understand a little bit more. So the voice of another is such an important part of that.
Of course, the voice of another and proper attention. You could have the voice of another, but you could not be paying attention. So here's an important aspect. It says, one makes an effort to abandon wrong view and to enter upon right view. This is one's right effort. So right effort is key. What is right effort? 6 R's. But right effort specifically here is making an effort to prevent all unarisen, unwholesome states from arising. First, abandoning already arisen, unwholesome states. Generating unarisen, wholesome states of mind. And maintaining already arisen, wholesome states of mind. So this can be brought down to even further two. The abandoning of the unwholesome and the awakening of the wholesome. So the abandoning of wrong view and the awakening of right view. Making that effort through, let's say, the 6 R's. Recognizing there is a wrong view arising in mind. Releasing your attention from that, relaxing, coming back to the smile, and coming to right view. Of course, how do you know that's the right view? You've heard about it before. You've read about it before. Mindfully, one abandons wrong view. Mindfully, one enters upon and abides in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. So right mindfulness. Sati. To remember. Be present in everything that you're doing. And then in that presence of mind, in recognizing, you see what is present. Wrong view or right view. And using mindfulness, you mindfully go to right view. Through the process of right effort. Right effort leads to right mindfulness. Thus, these 3 states run and circle around right view. That is right view, the knowledge of what is right view and wrong view, right effort, and right mindfulness. What about right intention? So, for right view to be established, one knows what is wrong intention and one knows what is right intention. What is wrong intention? The intention of sensual grasping, the intention of ill will, and the intention of cruelty. Having an intention to grasp and acquire things. Having an intention of ill will, aversion. Having an intention to harm another being through words, through mind, or through body. That's the cruelty. That's wrong intention. And what is right intention that is mundane? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of non-cruelty. So the intention of renunciation, the intention of seeing that this is not me, not mine, not myself, not taking things personally. Renouncing a sense of self in relation to everything. Letting go of sensual desire. The intention of non-ill will, not having ill will for any being. This is cultivated through the practice of loving kindness, metta. The intention of non-cruelty, not wanting to add suffering to another being. This is cultivated through compassion.
Can you elucidate a little further on the difference between the will and what do they seem
So ill will is the desire to, it's the aversion to something. Meaning I don't want that. Right? And there is an ill will, but then that can become aggravated into the desire to harm. There's a desire to push away, and there's a desire to harm. So non-ill will is a desire to push away, or ill will rather, and cruelty is a desire to harm. And what is the right intention that is supramundane? The thinking, thought, intention, mental absorption, mental fixity, directing of mind, verbal formation in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is the supramundane right intention. That is inclining the mind towards Nibbana. In essence, inclining the mind towards release. More than letting go of sensual desire, it's inclining the mind to experience complete freedom. So the inclination here is the right intention that is supramundane. Likewise, one makes an effort to abandon wrong intention and to enter upon right intention. This is one's right effort. Recognizing there's a wrong intention, an intention to harm, an intention to push away, an intention to desire. Releasing your attention from that, relaxing the tightness and tension, coming back to the smile, coming back to right intention, fixing your mind back towards release, towards Nibbana. Mindfully, one abandons wrong intention. Mindfully, one enters upon and abides in right intention. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run and circle around right intention. That is right view, knowing what is right intention and what is wrong intention. Right effort, making the effort to go from wrong intention to right intention. And right mindfulness, mindfully bringing back the attention to right intention. And then we have right speech. And what bhikkhus is wrong speech? First we need to know what is wrong speech. Wrong speech is false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip. This is wrong speech. False speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip. What is false speech? Knowing something to be untrue and presenting it to be as true. Knowing something to be true and presenting it to be as untrue. In essence, lying. That's false speech. Bearing false witness, false testimony. Malicious speech, harsh speech. What is malicious speech? Speech intended to harm, to cause harm to another. Harsh speech, using words that are coarse, using words that cause aggravation in the mind. And gossip, talking about another behind their back. How do you know you're gossiping? If you're talking about that person when they're not there, and you would rather not talk about that person if they were there, then you are indulging in gossip. So what is the right speech? What is the mundane right speech? Abstinence from false speech, abstinence from malicious speech, abstinence from harsh speech, and abstinence from gossip. There is a acronym that I use for right speech. This is called Think Before You Speak. T-H-I-N-K. Before you speak, think. Is it timely to say what you want to say? That's T. H. Is what you say, do you know it to be honest? Do you know it to be true? I. What is the intention behind that? Is it intentionally wholesome, intentionally unwholesome? N. Is it necessary for the other person to hear what it is that you want to say? And K. Can you say it with kindness? I've been approached by some people saying, well, sometimes I can't always say it with kindness. I have to be stern about these things. You could be kindly stern or sternly kind. So T-H-I-N-K. Think before you speak.
Does Buddha expand on right speech in other suttas? There is the Dhamma Sutta,
There's the Abhaya Sutta.
He says things like, if I remember correctly, like basically time wasting and things, same things that aren't really necessary, just
Right.
in space.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Think. Is it timely or untimely? Is it true or untrue? What is the intention behind it? Is it necessary or unnecessary? And can you say it with kindness? And the Buddha talks about it, and he says there are circumstances where it could be timely but not beneficial or necessary. It could be timely but not true. Different ways that you can either say what you want to say or not say what you want to say. That's from the Abhaya Sutta, I believe. Abhaya Sutta.
Instead, it is better to have noble silence.
Know what?
It is better to have noble silence. Silence is better.
Oh, noble silence.
Silence is better when compared to thinking.
Yeah. How many of you are practicing noble silence here, by the way? I only see one hand raised. Okay, 2 hands raised. Okay, 3 hands raised. Not bad.
Almost.
Oh, you have a question? No, I'm talking about not speaking during the retreat.
My question is, instead of realizing in all these things, magnanimous, which are silence is better.
Not all the time. Sometimes it's necessary to say it.
But before the speech, there is supermundane quality. Arahants, that is supermundane quality. Directing everything, Nibbana, I am not able to follow. Please clarify.
Right intention. Basically, your mind is inclining or it's fixing its mind towards Nibbana.
For each and
So the intention is always doing something that inclines towards Nibbana. So inclining the mind, in other words, inclining the mind to always follow the way leading to Nibbana. This is the Eightfold Path. So, the speech that is super mundane is desisting from the 4 kinds of verbal misconduct. What are the 4 kinds of verbal misconduct here? The same thing? Okay. The abstaining, refraining, abstinence from in one whose mind is noble, taintless, and possesses the noble path. So that is basically the same thing, but always automatically abstaining from that. One makes an effort to abandon wrong speech and to enter upon right speech. This is one's right effort. Mindfully, one abandons wrong speech. Mindfully, one enters upon and abides in right speech. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these 3 states run and circle around right speech. That is right view, knowing what is right speech and wrong speech, right effort, using the 6 R's. If you have an intention to say something that is harmful or harsh, letting that go, and using right speech to de-escalate a situation, for example. And then, right mindfulness, using the mindfulness to be aware of what kind of speech you intend to use. And then bringing it back to right speech if it's going to be wrong speech. There are two kinds of right action: mundane right action and super mundane right action. What is right action? Or let's say, what is wrong action first? So first you need to know what is right action, what is wrong action. What is the wrong action? Killing living beings, taking what is not given, and misconduct in sensual pleasures. So this is part of the precepts, right? Breaking of the precepts. In the case of using false speech, that is the fourth precept. Killing living beings is the first precept, abstaining from that. Abstaining from taking what is not given, that is the second precept. Abstaining from sensual misconduct, that is the third precept. What is the right action? That is abstinence from killing living beings, abstinence from taking what is not given, abstinence from misconduct in sensual pleasures. So the supramundane is automatically desisting from the three kinds of bodily misconduct. You don't even have to think about it. It just happens automatically. So in other words, the mundane is to be developed, and as a result of being developed, the supramundane automatically is a natural aspect of that mind. So again, one makes an effort to abandon wrong action and to enter upon right action. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong action. Mindfully one enters upon and dwells in right action. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around right action. That is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Okay, what about livelihood? Okay, this is an interesting one. What is wrong livelihood? Actually, there is a sutta, I think, in Digha Nikaya, which gives a whole list of what is wrong livelihood, especially for the monastic community. You can't read people's palms, you can't indulge in astrology, you can't do medicine, you can't do accounting, you can't do all kinds of things. Yeah. Samanaphala Sutta.
Well, it's always.
Yeah.
It's always like this.
Yeah. Basically, the wrong livelihood for a monastic, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is doing anything that does not lead to nibbana.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because, well, I mean, you should obviously apply that to lay people, but for lay people, there are certain kinds of trades or businesses that you don't deal with. So these businesses that engage in selling arms, selling weapons, human trafficking, poisons, intoxicants, and in meat. These are the 5 wrong livelihoods. But here it's an interesting one. It says, scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. This is wrong livelihood.
Pursuing gain with gain.
Pursuing gain with gain. So if I'm a monastic and I get this really nice bowl of food, I go to Bhante and Ānanda and I said, I'll trade you this bowl of food for that really nice robe that you have. Or he gets a nice robe and he says, you know, you have a really nice kuti over there. I'll give you this robe if you can rent out that kuti for me. So pursuing gain with gain is making exchanges. Am I right about that? Yeah. Right. So the intention is important behind it. Yeah.
Well, that making interest.
Oh, making interest off of a bowl of food.
Or something like that. This is too much.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, that pursuing gain with gain, is that for lay people?
No. This is from monastics. You guys can still make interest on your fixed deposits. Don't worry. It's fine.
You can give it to us. It's fine.
So scheming and what is it? Hinting and belittling. I think again that refers to monastics primarily. Hinting, saying, hey, that's a nice piece of food over there. Is anyone going to have that? So there is the right livelihood, which is abstaining from these things. Abstaining in the case of the lay people, those 5 kinds of, any kind of business, any kind of work that causes harm for oneself and harm for another. That's wrong livelihood. So right livelihood is abstaining from that kind of livelihood. So then we have right mindfulness and right collectedness. Right mindfulness is the satipatthana. Understanding body as body, feeling as feeling, mind as mind, Dhamma as Dhamma. So in other words, using the first step of recognize to be able to know where your mind is at in every given moment. Is there craving in there? Is there aversion in there? And you need proper attention to facilitate that process of mindfulness. Right effort leads to right mindfulness leads to right collectedness, right concentration. What is right concentration? What have you guys been doing all this time? Right collectedness encompasses the 4 jhanas. Secluded from
So it's mentioned like that. But in this particular sutta, it is collectedness is defined as the alignment of various 7 factors.
right. So the right collectedness here, as Bhante was saying, is the alignment of the preceding 7 factors. So right view leads to right intention leads to right speech leads to right action, right livelihood, right effort leads to right mindfulness leads to right collectedness. And that collectedness encompasses the experience of the 4 jhanas. So now, there is another sutta which talks about what is the equipment of right collectedness. Right effort and right mindfulness. You make an effort, the right effort, to notice your mind is uncollected, not collected. And mindful, you bring it back to a collected state of mind. And you require proper attention for this. Yoniso manasikara. So, what I am going to say here is that right effort is the heart of the Eightfold Path. The beginning of the Eightfold Path is right view. You require right view. And all of that leads into each other. And they all are interconnected. Right? And there are 2 other path factors that are opened, let's say. They are downloadable content once you perfect the path. That is right insight and right liberation. Samajnana, samavimukti. But in terms of the Eightfold Path, you go from wrong view to right view, wrong intention to right intention, wrong speech to right speech, wrong action to right action, wrong livelihood to right livelihood, wrong mindfulness to right mindfulness, wrong collectedness to right collectedness, through the process of right effort. So the heart, that's what I'm saying, the core of the Eightfold Path is using right effort. Once you utilize right effort, then you go from the wrong factors to the right factors. So when we talk about the path leading to the cessation of whatever it might be, it is the Eightfold Path. But in your mind, understand that the practical application of that is through the right effort. The 6 R's, in this case.
I just love how, again, the Buddha says, right collectedness comes through the Eightfold Path. No mention at all about looking at one object.
Yeah.
It's just so clear.
So it's a natural progression.
And it's so much more alive, it's so much more, harmonious, that it's not just one thing, it's actually just a whole lively process of thought.
So when you think about that, in that right collectedness, which is, or let's say the the component of samadhi. There are three components of samadhi: right effort, right mindfulness, and right collectedness. But those are facilitated through the process of sila, right speech, right action, right livelihood. But you can't have right speech, right action, right livelihood without the right intention. And you can't have the right intention without the right view. So coming back to this sutta, now that we have some clarity on the Eightfold Path, let's get back to the penetrative discourse. When bhikkhus, a noble disciple, thus understands sensual pleasures, the origin of sensual pleasures, the diversity of sensual pleasures, the result of sensual pleasures, the cessation of sensual pleasures, and the way leading to the cessation of sensual pleasures, he understands this penetrative spiritual life to be the cessation of sensual pleasures. When it was said, feelings should be understood, and so on, for what reason was this said? There are, bhikkhus, three feelings. Remember when we spoke about feelings before, the Buddha said he's talked about two kinds of feeling. He's talked about three kinds of feeling. He's talked about 5 types of feeling, 6 types of feeling, 18 types of feeling, 36 types of feeling, 108 types of feeling. But here we're just talking about 3 types of feeling. What are those 3 types? Pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. What is the source and origin of feeling? Contact. Again, contact. Contact gives rise to feeling. Phassa gives rise to Vedana. What is the diversity of feeling? There is worldly pleasant feeling. There is spiritual pleasant feeling. There is worldly painful feeling. There is spiritual painful feeling. There is worldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling. There is spiritual neither painful nor pleasant feeling. This is called the diversity of feelings. So what does that mean, worldly and spiritual? One has to do with this body. The other has to do with freedom, has to do with inclining towards nibbana, essentially, because the worldly pleasant feeling is a pleasant feeling that you experience through the 5 physical sense bases. But the worldly pleasant feeling, or the spiritual pleasant feeling, is jhana, experiencing jhanas. There is worldly painful feeling. We know what that is, right? Everybody knows what that is? What is spiritual painful feeling? Huh? Not being in jhana. Meditation pain can be one thing, but traditionally it's talked about is there's that inclination, that grief that arises. Oh, when will I be free of suffering? When will I be free? Yeah, you could say, but it's more like that some vega is there. It's like that I'm sick and tired of all of this. When will I have that experience?
Then adding to the suffering.
Then adding to the suffering from that. There is worldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling. What would that be? What is a worldly neutral feeling? Indifference, equanimity, some level of equanimity. But what about the spiritual neither painful nor pleasant feeling? It's the 4th jhana, really. 4th jhana doesn't have neither pain nor pleasure, neither joy nor grief. And what is the result of feelings? One produces an individual existence that corresponds with whatever feeling one experiences, and which may be the consequence either of merit or demerit. This is called the result of feelings. So again, one produces an individual existence that corresponds with whatever feelings one experiences, and which may be the consequence either of merit or demerit. Feeling is old karma, Vedana. It is to be experienced, and as a result of that, one can create a new habitual tendency, a bhava, an inclination towards existing in a certain state of mind or a certain plane of existence, which gives rise to birth of new existence or birth of new action, which adds to that whole process of karmic renewal. And what is the cessation of feeling? With the cessation of contact, there is a cessation of feeling. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of feeling. In other words, let's say right effort, the heart of that is the way leading to the cessation of feeling. Because using right effort, you recognize you have wrong intention towards something, which gives rise to a feeling which could be imbued with craving. You recognize that, release your attention from that, let that go, right? Relax. Come back to a wholesome state of mind and see things with proper wisdom thus. This is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Thereby you don't create an individual existence dependent upon or corresponding with the quality of that feeling. So now we'll talk about perceptions after this short break. There are, bhikkhus, these 6 perceptions: perception of forms, perception of sounds, perception of odors, perception of tastes, perception of tactile objects, perception of mental phenomena. So what is perception? Perception is that which recognizes an experience. Feeling and perception are intertwined. When there is a feeling, there is a perception of that experience. The knowing that this is a painful feeling, pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, the knowing of that is perception. The labeling of this as red, this is white, this is a ceiling fan, this is a video camera. Knowing what that is perception. So there are 6 kinds of perceptions. Perceptions of forms, that this is a kind of form and color actually. Perception of sounds, this is the pleasant sound and unpleasant sound. This is music by Beethoven, this is music by Eminem, whatever the music is. This is a sound. That's the sound of a bee buzzing, that's the sound of a fly buzzing, that's the sound of this particular bird, the recognition of that quality of that sound. Perception of odors. This is a pleasant odor, this is an unpleasant odor. Right? This is a perfume, this is the smell of garbage, and so on. Perception of tastes. This is salty, this is bitter, this is sweet, this is spicy, this is umami. Perception of tactile objects. This is coarse, this is smooth, this is hot, this is cold, and so on. This is wet, this is dry. Perception of mental phenomena. Perception of mental phenomena are This is this kind of thought. This is a wholesome thought. This is an unwholesome thought. This is an idea. This is a concept. This is a memory. This is a reflection. This is a thought experiment. Whatever it might be. What is the source and origin of perceptions? How do perceptions arise? Contact. Just as contact gives rise to a feeling, if perception is intertwined with feeling, it is dependent upon contact. What is the diversity of perceptions? The perception of forms is one thing. The perception of sounds is another. The perception of odors still another. The perception of tastes still another. The perception of tactile objects still another. The perception of mental phenomena still another. This is called the diversity of perception. So different kinds of perceptions can arise in relation to sense objects or mental objects. And what is the result of perceptions? What do perceptions result in? I say that perceptions result in expression. In whatever way one perceives something, in just that way one expresses oneself, saying, I was percipient of such and such. This is called the result of perception. There is that part of mind in you, even when you are meditating, where the mind says, it's not verbal. It doesn't have to be verbal. It's sometimes just a knowing. There is joy present. A knowing there is equanimity present. A knowing mind is calm. A knowing mind is agitated. That expression of that is that non-verbal knowing. The result of that, or the result comes from the perception of what is happening. On a coarser level, it's the expression of speech. I see a tree and I say, hey, look at that tree, look at that oak tree. So the perceiving of that, then one says, I am percipient of such and such. But in the jhana or in the meditation, you are percipient of compassion, percipient of loving kindness. How else are you guys able to report to us what's going on in your meditation if there is no perception? In perceiving, then there is the result of that in seeing, oh, this is what I am experiencing right now. That's called expression. And what is the cessation of perceptions? With the cessation of contact, there is cessation of perceptions. Why? When you put your attention on something, I'm looking at this camera, I am seeing that this is a camera. I'm seeing the camera, that's the feeling. The perception is that this is a camera. If my attention goes away and is on Bhante Ānanda, now there is contact between Bhante Ānanda and my eye. And there is eye consciousness. My attention is on Bhante Ānanda. But now I don't see the camera. I don't perceive the camera. I perceive Bhante Ānanda. So in daily life, understand where your attention is. If it is in the unwholesome, siksar it. Or just close your eyes, in the case of your eyes. Right? So, a matter of recognizing through proper attention, through mindfulness, seeing what is happening in reference to perception of form, of sound, of tastes, of odors, of tangibles, and of mind objects. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of perceptions. So how do you seize contact? How do you seize the attention to that? Recognizing that there is this experience, releasing your attention from it, relaxing, coming back to a wholesome object. This is the utilization, the application of the Eightfold Path. Now we're going to talk about the taints, the asavas. There are bhikkhus, these three taints: the taint of sensuality, the taint of existence, and the taint of ignorance. The taint of sensuality. This is where mind inclines towards sensual craving. The taint of existence. Mind inclines towards the craving to be, to craving to become. The taint of ignorance, where there is a lack of mindfulness. So there is a sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 9, which is known as Samaditi Sutta, right view. And in there, Sariputta uses a similar kind of process, using the Four Noble Truths as a way of understanding the links of dependent origination. So there is present, let's say, clinging. That's the first noble truth. The origin of clinging is craving. The cessation of craving is the cessation of clinging. Using the Eightfold Path is the way of ceasing craving and thus ceasing clinging. So in the same way, he also talks about the taints, and he says that ignorance, avidya, gives rise to sankharas. But what gives rise to ignorance? The taints give rise to ignorance. The potentials, the inclination to have desire, sensual desire, the inclination to have desire for being, the inclination for having lack of attention, lack of mindfulness. Every time you crave, sensually crave, it feeds back energy to the taint of sensual desire. And the next momentum gives rise, in the next arising, to a stronger inclination for the taint of sensual desire, or for sensual craving. But if you have let go of ignorance and are mindful in that moment, and you use right effort to let go of that craving, then bit by bit, you drill away at the taint of sensual desire. Likewise with the taint of desire for becoming. Likewise for the taint of ignorance. It's all dependent upon having mindfulness, having attention and proper wisdom of seeing all experience as impermanent, as not me, not mine, not myself, not worth holding on to. So then he asks, what is the source and origin of the taints? What do you think the origin of the taints are? Ignorance is the source and origin of the taints. Just as there is an interdependency between mind and body and consciousness, mentality, materiality, and consciousness, there is an interdependency upon ignorance and the taints. When the taints arise, ignorance arises. Through ignorance, the taints arise. What is ignorance? Not knowing the Four Noble Truths, not applying the Four Noble Truths, not having wisdom, not applying mindfulness, proper attention. And what is the diversity of the taints? There are taints leading to hell. There are taints leading to the animal realm. There are taints leading to the realm of afflicted spirits. There are taints leading to the human world. There are taints leading to the Deva world. This is called the diversity of the taints. So they have a destination that they lead to. And what is the result of the taints? One immersed in ignorance, one who does not apply the Four Noble Truths, is unaware of the Four Noble Truths, one who has lack of mindfulness, produces a corresponding individual existence which may be the consequence either of merit or demerit. In other words, it is a perpetuation of rebirth, of the karmic cycle. This is called the result of the taints. What is the cessation of the taints? With the cessation of ignorance, there is the cessation of the taints. Having awareness, you don't add to that repository of the taints. And when ignorance is completely destroyed, the taints are completely destroyed. This noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of the taints, the application of the Eightfold Path through the process of right effort. Now we'll talk about karma. It is volition or intention, bhikkhus, that I call karma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, or mind. This is karma. Here the Buddha is talking about karma as an action. There's two ways of understanding karma, right? Old karma, which is karma that you inherit as a result of previous consequences, choices, or as a consequence of previous choices, let's say. And then there is the new karma, which is the intention to act by mind, body, and speech. This is the karma that we're talking about. What is the source and origin of karma? What is the source and origin of karma? How does one act? Where does the process of thinking or inclining the mind come from? Where does the intention to speak come from? Where does the intention to act come from? How does it arise? What facilitates it? Contact. Why? When you have contact with an experience, there is an inclination to react to that experience. There is an inclination to engage with that experience. There's an intention to do something. You see something and you say, this is what it is. The inclination to speak. It's hot outside. You're feeling hot and uncomfortable. You see the shade of a tree. In seeing that, you use bodily intention to walk towards the tree and meditate under it. You make contact with something and you think about that, and you have mental intention towards that. So contact is the key here. Contact gives rise, as I said, to feeling, to perception, to intention, to karma. Contact is the key. Sparsha, phassa. The Buddha has said karma is of two kinds, as I said, old karma and new karma. That karma, the eye is old karma, the ear is old karma, the nose is old karma, the tongue is old karma, the body is old karma, the mind is old karma. To be made contact with, felt, and experienced. This is all old karma. How you choose to take that experience and what you choose to do with it is the intention, which is the new karma. What is the diversity of karma? There is karma to be experienced in hell. There is karma to be experienced in the animal realm. There is karma to be experienced in the realm of afflicted spirits. There is karma to be experienced in the human world. There is karma to be experienced in the Deva world. This is called diversity of karma. The fact that you exist in this experience, in this reality as a human being, is karma. What is the result of karma? The result of karma, I say, is threefold. To be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of karma. Remember, we use that analogy of the different kinds of fruits, different kinds of fruit seeds. You have a watermelon seed, you have an orange seed, you have an apple seed. Depending upon what kind of moisture, how much moisture is given, what kind of causes and conditions are present, certain karma will come to fruition at certain stages. or in their own time, dependent upon the causes and conditions. So some karma will be immediately effective. Some karma will arise after some time. Some karma after even longer time. And some karma not at all, if no causes and conditions are present for it to come up. And what bhikkhus is the cessation of karma. With the cessation of contact, there's cessation of karma. How is that the case? How does ceasing contact cease karma? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. A dissolution of the 5 aggregates. But the dissolution of the 5 aggregates is one thing. But if there is craving in there, there can be furtherance of karma. But the contact we're talking about in daily life, if the consciousness, which is directed by attention, is tainted through fettered formations, then there will be an inclination to crave. There will be an inclination to have aversion towards, an inclination to take personally. But if you see that wrong intention, if you see that attention is rooted in misperceiving reality as it is, then you recognize it, release your attention from that, relax, come back to a wholesome state of mind. So the cessation of karma, what is the way leading to the cessation of karma? The Eightfold Path. So that super mundane Eightfold Path that does not partake in merits, that does not ripen in acquisitions. So this Eightfold Path, having right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, it causes no harm to oneself, causes no harm to another. Seeing things as they are, facilitated through that Eightfold Path. You don't add to the experience, you don't take away from that experience. You see that experience, or you experience it as it actually is. In that experience of just the experience, no new karma arises. So that is a cessation of old karma. Hindrances being old karma. When they arise, if there is engagement with them, then they further proliferate. If there is non-engagement with them, and there is a relaxation through the process of the 6 R's, then the hindrances weaken and finally dissipate. If you take this in every experience of your life, you will see that until you let go of certain situations, when we talk about rebirth, for example, what is rebirth? Talk about rebirth from one life to the next life. But there's rebirth in terms of arising and passing away of consciousness. But in the middle way, there's also rebirth of situations. I say that rebirth is the same as insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Getting yourself in the same or similar kinds of situations. Getting yourself in the same or similar kinds of relationships. Dealing with the same or similar kinds of people. Until you learn to let go of them. So this is also karmic in nature. You're adding to that every time you make mistakes and take it personally. You just add to that situation. And you keep digging yourself into that situation or into that relationship or whatever it might be. But if you see things as they actually are, you stop taking them personally. And bit by bit, those situations dissipate without further fuel of craving and aversion or identification given to them. Or those relationships, or whatever that might be. And eventually, after you've learned your lesson, you don't get yourself into those same kinds of situations. So here, wisdom is important. Now we'll get into the last part. Suffering should be understood. Yeah.
Diversity of Dhamma. There was no mention about the Brahma.
Well, we can assume that it is talking about the Brahmalokas and the Arupa Brahmalokas. Everything ripens in karma, even in the Brahmalokas. Well, I mean, if you talk about the Devalokas, we could assume that they're talking about the Brahmalokas. You could see it in different ways. You could see it as the six, or rather the existences in the sensual realms. But there is ripening of karma in the Brahmalokas as well as the Arupa Lokas. Anyone else has a question before I continue? So now we're going to talk about suffering. So what is suffering? Birth is suffering. Old age is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and anguish are suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. There is the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. In that, there's a section there which I've done before, but in that section which talks about what is suffering, if you want the whole list of different kinds of suffering, it's all there. Or you can just read the book, Dukkha. Birth is suffering. Birth is suffering. Now there's different ways of understanding birth is suffering. Birth of new karma is suffering. Birth of action is suffering. Birth of new existence is suffering because you're coming back to doing the same thing over and over again in samsara. But physical birth also is suffering. I can't speak from experience because I'm a man, but I'm sure women who've experienced childbirth can attest to the fact of how birth is painful, is suffering. And remember, this is the time of the Buddha. I was just watching this video recently talking about, how many people have actually lived throughout the earth in the last, how many of our generations? 117 billion people have come and gone on this planet, according to most recent numbers. 117 billion people, humans. And he was talking about how a lot of that. Death is suffering. Death is suffering because a person can fear death, have that death anxiety. That can lead to a person being violent. One who is afraid of death can be extremely violent. And in order to control power over death, they inflict death on others. Death is suffering because it causes grief for those who are still here. The death of their loved ones. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and anguish are suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. Getting what one doesn't want is also suffering. You're standing in line and you're looking forward to some chocolate pie. But it's not there anymore. Suffering. There's only banana pie. So we talked about suffering in terms of dukkha, dukkha, viparinama dukkha, sankhara dukkha. So this is what it's talking about. What is the source and origin of suffering? This is a pretty easy one. What is the source of suffering? Craving, tanha. Yeah, but here it's saying craving is the source and origin of suffering. The craving is dependent upon the conceit, but from the craving there can arise suffering. What is the diversity of suffering? There is extreme suffering. There is slight suffering. There is suffering that fades away slowly. There is suffering that fades away quickly. This is called the diversity of suffering. So different temperaments of suffering. And what is the result of suffering? This is an interesting one. Here, someone overcome by suffering with a mind obsessed by it, sorrows, languishes, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes confused. Or else, overcome by suffering with a mind obsessed by it, he embarks upon a search outside, saying, "Who knows one or two words for putting an end to this suffering?" Searching for TWIM on YouTube. Suffering, I say, results either in confusion or in a search. This is called the result of suffering. And what is the cessation of suffering? With the cessation of craving, there is the cessation of suffering. This noble eightfold path is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So these are the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This, bhikkhus, is that penetrative exposition of the Dhamma. Any questions? So there's two kinds of noble silence, right? There's a noble silence in terms of practicality, of keeping your verbal silence, not speaking. But the noble silence that arises in the second jhana, with the cessation of thinking and examining thought. That's the cessation of vitakka and vichara. So the noble silence here is the cessation of intentionalizing any kind of verbalizing, intentionalizing any kind of wholesome image to bring up the object of meditation. Well, we have dealt with that suffering aspect now, having been born. We are always suffering. There's always going to be suffering. So how are you going to find Nibbana? You've been born into this world. We've all been born into this world, into this life. That's suffering. We've all experienced some kind of loss and rejection. That's suffering. But now that we're here, there is an inclination for Nibbana. That inclination arose due to the suffering. Yeah, the Upanisa Sutta. The suffering leads to faith, and so on. So now we just said, right, suffering can have two results: further confusion or a search. Is there a way out of this suffering? So we've found ourselves here in samsara, but now we're seeking a way out of samsara. For good. Yeah.
Two questions. One, during the sutta you mentioned that when there's no contact, there's no karma. And also that to not have contact, you had to not have connection with the eye, the mind, and form. Not have connection with the mouth, the taste, and the form, or the perception. Can you elaborate on the no contact, no harm?
Yeah. So another way of understanding it is just very simply is that the contact gives rise to feeling. That is to be experienced. But if the contact has consciousness that is already tainted by craving, then it will incline towards craving. So, of course, that's one kind of cessation of contact. The other kind of cessation of contact is nirodha. In nirodha, there is no karmic output or input.
The other question I had was, you had mentioned that, also in that sentence, that there are no intermediate states. Where does the word bardo come from?
Bardo is more of a Tibetan Buddhist idea. I think it's found in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And the way I would look at Bardo are that there's still mental states that are being experienced prior to the next life. So before the dissolution of all of the aggregates, there's still some mind element still being experienced, or which is experiencing the states of Bardo. And then whatever inclination is there, that then will incline towards the new being or the new state of existence. That's why I was saying yesterday that, of course, this is just what I'm saying, so take it for what it's worth, is that the body and the mind unravel, the six sense bases unravel in a certain way. So even if the body is medically and clinically dead, there's still some element of mind going on. Which is why it's important that when there is the death of a loved one, that it's important not to cry and weep and lament, because it's possible that that mind will feel upset, will experience aversion. But if you can actually be there and be wholesome and apply some kind of wisdom, it's possible that that mind will incline towards the wholesome. Or you will help that mind incline towards the wholesome.
But I think there's because the body, this whole body in my Nama Rupa, this cannot be Nama without Rupa, and cannot feel the Rupa without the Nama.
Right.
So if the body is dead physically, so it's kind of impossible for the
Because there's still vitality there. There's still the Jivit Indriya that's still present.
So it means that if the body is not physically really dead, it does some sorts of things go on in the body that we do not recognize it. I think this makes sense more than the body is physically.
I'm saying clinically dead, which I mean to say that our current medical sensors say that that body is kaput. That's the medical term, kaput. No, but that's a good point that you bring up. When you think about the arupa jhanas, though, or the arupa realms, there's just nama, no rupa there.
What's the feeling? Because there's no nama.
There's only mentality there.
Because the feeling of Arapa. Because the perception, this feeling, it's not actually without nama. Because there's no nama and no rupa.
Right, but if there's no rupa, there can still be nama, that's what I'm saying.
That's the feeling.
There's just a feeling, mental feeling. Mental feeling, yes.
With the perception, I mean that there's no, you cannot feel Arupa.
Right.
So it has to be Nama Arupa.
Right, but then what about the arupa states? Is there rupa there?
I think it's just a perception, that's the feeling.
Perception of rupa.
Perception of Arupa. Feeling of Arupa.
Okay.
Whether they
And you mentioned about Arupa dream.
Whether or not there is awareness or perception of the body is still there. So that consciousness is still dependent on the body, but it's So the Nama Rupa and consciousness principles still operate, but it's just that mind has been purified that it doesn't know Rupa anymore. But if something were to happen to that body at that time and die, for example, then it would have the consciousness would have to move on. It would have to find another body. It would lean towards another existence, because mind cannot exist without thought, or without Rupa. It doesn't mean because we're not aware of it that it's not there. Because, I mean, that's the principle.
In case of that, as Delson mentioned about Aru, so what's being there not affected by the yoga? It means that how do you work for the being in the Aru realm? Because then you can see that Nama-rupa lead to conscious lead to. So what kind of beings in Aru
So now in the Brahmalokas, for example, not all the six sense bases are there. Likewise, in the Arupa realms, there's only mind. So in the case of the dissolution of the body, that's the dissolution of any functioning in the body. But mind is still present. This is what I'm saying. Mind is still in body. Mind is in the process of death. Mind is still present. Body is now like a log. There's still vitality there. The heat is dissipating. The vitality is ended when the mind sense ends. That's when consciousness has no footing anymore in mind or body. Anywhere from 3.5 hours to longer.
And I remember in the MN 42 or 43,
Yeah.
it mentioned about the vitality and the heat.
Yes.
There's no vitality if there's no heat.
There's no heat, then there's no vitality. Yes.
So I'm just saying that in the term of physical body, it might not be really.
It is not really dead. It's dead by clinical standards. That's what I'm saying.
So it's pretty similar because so state of yoga, for example, for 7 later, everything seems very, very limited.
Right.
You cannot know it.
You cannot know if there's actual, if somebody's actually alive.
So it means that the battle is pretty the same like someone in the.
Not in Nirodha, not someone in Nirodha. It's happening in the mind.
So it means that the physical body can die, and after 7 days, the mind.
No, I wouldn't say after 7 days that the mind departs.
I mean, that's the physical body still active. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Yes, the physical body is still able to active for around next 7 days, like in the yoga state. After that, everything will be finished. In terms of the medical, it's physically dead.
Right, it's physically dead, but mind could still be unraveling. Mind could still be unraveling. It could take anywhere from a few hours to a few days. We'll have to experiment and see.
Tibet Buddhist, the Bardo, and belief is 49 days.
So the Bardos is 49 days, so 7 times 7 weeks then. So, I mean 7 weeks basically. Right.
Of course it has to be with 7s.
It's always 7s. 7 times 7.
7 times 7.
But basically what we're saying is that the mind will still be unraveling. So my point here is when next time somebody dies, don't lament. I'm talking about practical means. Just be there, radiate loving kindness, be there to support that person or that being that is on its way out. So even if you feel like you missed your chance to say goodbye after that body is clinically dead, you could still say goodbye. You could still say, I love you, and whatever else you want to say to them.
There was actually a story relating that in the Vinaya.
Oh, is there?
Where a monk just takes a roll, a piece of cloth from a body in the charnel ground, and the body is dead, and just the monk thinks, oh, this is just, it's not usable for this anymore. So he takes the piece of cloth and goes back to his house and notice that the corpse is actually walking.
Right.
And then closing the door and the spirit goes. And so we have a rule not to take
clothing from the charnel ground.
7 days.
So then that 7 days makes sense then in that case. Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, mind can unravel and dissipate at most up to 7 days from that body.
We'll be usually after a funeral in the 7th day, we'll be in big Ānanda to the Sādhu and ceremonies.
Go ahead.
So one more question. You had mentioned that there are certain taints that take you to the animal realm, taints that take you to the human realm, taints that even take you to the deva realm. Would that taint be the conceit I am?
Yeah. So the taint of sensual desire can lead you to any of the 6 sensual heavens, or the human realm, or animal realm, or whatever it might be. Once that goes away, there's still a taint for being. So that can lead you to any of the Brahma lokas still. Oh, was this? Yeah.
There are actually accounts of people who are clinically dead. They saw themselves being given electric shocks. And this is actually scientifically reported by a researcher called Ian Stevenson. He's written a lot of books on the basis of the reincarnation life. And on specific instances, they come back and say, hey, you did this to me while I was clinically dead. So my question and follow-up to that is, in the Aruba, or in the case where this person is clinically dead and watching themselves on the bar, is this a case of mind-made body?
Yeah, it can be a case of mind-made body.
So in that sense, there is still some form of rupa.
There's some form of connection with the 6 sense bases if you look at it. Because they felt, right? They could feel them giving an electric shock to the body.
They didn't really feel it. They were like reporting it as though they are even an entity. They know that they are being to that body. And even in the case of Arupa, I'm just picking up on what Mom said. Like, Nama and Rupa coexist. Even in the Arupa, would it be a possibility of a mind-made body?
In that case, it's still mentality. It's still mind.
Right. And when you say in the Sutta, Buddha goes to the Brahma.
Yeah.
And he talks, and also to Aniruddha somehow. He projects himself as a mind-made body.
Sometimes there are 2 levels. Arupa state of appearance and Arupa. Right. Material appearance as well as immaterial appearance. So when we are talking about material appearance, Arupa appearance, so that basically is body mental.
Yeah.
So there are Arupa as he pointed out. It doesn't mean that the physical world, physical material may be kind of a perception of matter. Arupa, just as I came from that telling, it doesn't indicate that we have kind of a physical component, other kind of sign taken from the physical component is present. Right.
Because material can also be gross or subtle. Gross is this, what we're experiencing. But the subtle can be a different kind of material, let's say.
Even for electric shocks, rain must not have been dead. Rain should have been present.
Right. Yeah, that's how then you have the, yeah. Yeah.
Not let it go.
Yeah. Wait, before that, did you have something to say? Oh, okay.
Let's follow this. I think the body is technically better. The life box and the vitality still left.
That's, yeah, the vitality, which is the Jivitendriya, is still there.
Because in that case, not an explained thing. But if you think that there's a Rupa-Kaya body, it means that the body can, the Buddha can expand like much further by creating another form of God Arupa and then just continue forever. I mean, if there's any kind of Arupa body like that, the Buddha can be forever.
But no, when we talk about, listen guys, listen. When we talk about Arupa, there is no materiality there.
That's why even Buddha can't go there. Consider the other prayer. So even beyond the access of the Buddhas. So that's why there is an example when Buddha become enlightened, he checked whom that I can first teach Dhamma. He understood Alar Kalam in the ground. But they were born in the Arupa realm, but no access. And then he, like a second choice was the by ascetics. So likewise, when one becomes the Arupa realm, so there are no physical components, so they can't hear that. So there is no way of communicating.
There is no six sense bases there. There's just mind. I mean, there's no five physical sense bases. There's just mind. And even in the Brahma Lokas, not all the sense bases are active. So, and the Kaya, by the way, Rupa and Kaya. Kaya can also mean mentality or mind body. Not necessarily, like when he says, for example, he says a body witness, right? It's translated as body witness. It says Kaya. What is it in the Pali? Kaya Sakha. Kaya Sakhi. Yeah. So Kaya Sakhi means that he has touched his body with those experiences. Doesn't mean his physical body necessarily. Kaya can also mean mind. He has touched his mind with that. So Rupa is the physical material. Kaya is it can mean body, but it can also mean mind. Yeah.
I thought Kaya Sakhi was more like, because the Buddha also says sometimes, is tasted the truth, which is so hard to know with this body, because it's so gross.
Yeah.
There's an original statement like, I so that's even through the body he feels the intensification.
Yeah. It can also mean that, but here when we talk about it, because the mind also touches, the bodily witness is one thing, one liberated both ways is another thing. But they're experiencing liberation by going through the four jhanas, Rupa, and then the Arupa as well, which is not experienced in the body. In that case, it's mental body, let's say, Kaya. So it can mean physical body, because the body does feel relief as a result of experiencing Nirvana. But here the Kaya, just to clarify, because the clarification I'm doing is that there's no way of a Rupa or a Kaya as a Rupa to be present in an Arupa jhana. That's all I'm referring to.
Actually, I want to Dhamma asked about stopping of the generation of Dhamma. So now when the Buddha's advice to buy, So if one is maintaining that kind of restraint,
Yeah.
that means he's not making I.
Yes.
So that's another way of interpreting that they are
Producing any new karma. Right. So an arhat never produces any new karma. Their actions are non-effective in producing any new karma. Because their mind is stabilized in the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path being an implementation of speech and action that doesn't result in any new karma. Yeah.
When there is no willpower, how can someone meditate and reach Dhamma?
If there is materiality in where?
Sorry, I mean, they will be there for years and at the end of the hour they will come down. There's no access. So that's why it was like something that we get better right now.
No, what he's saying is that it's not possible to experience, if I'm understanding correctly, Nibbana through an arupa realm.
Unless, I don't know, unless suppose Anadami goes to the
Right. But there is a few references, very minor references in, I think, the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha talks to Sariputta, and Sariputta says, how could it be when one doesn't have an intention, one's own intention or the intention of another, where does he end up? And the Buddha says that he could end up in neither perception nor non-perception, and then will not return from that world again, or will not return to this world from there again, which some people interpret as becoming an anagami and then attaining parinibbana. Quite possible. Let's add some controversy here. There is something known as a jhana anagami. Have you heard of the statement?
That's from a commentary.
No, there is a mention in a couple of places in the Anguttara Nikaya, which doesn't specifically say jhana anagami. But what it says is, one who experiences jhana consistently, when the body dissolves, when the life dissolves, they will not return back to this sensual sphere again. This is called the autumn, And there's a couple of other references. So here they talk about jhana anagami in the sense that such a being would be experiencing jhana at the point of death, which means their mind is free of. So first of all, they need to be a Sotapanna or Sakadagami. That's the other understanding. Once you're a Sotapanna and a Sakadagami and you enter into jhana at the point of death, the idea is from there you will not return back to this sensual realm. And then depending upon which jhana you've cultivated, you will go to that corresponding Brahmaloka or Rupaloka. Again, this is controversy, so do your own research. Yeah. First become a Sotapanna, keep developing your practice. You might as well become an anagami in that process. One way or the other. Yeah, let's hear this one.
Sarada Sutta. So this is book of 3 in the Anguttara Nikaya, 94, autumn. And that reference to Jnana Nagami is actually in the commentary, but I guess it's quite outspoken. So, just as in the autumn, monks, after the rains, when the rain clouds split and dissipate from the heavens, the sun rises up and ascends the sky, dispelling all darkness by its radiance and luminous effulgence. Similarly, monks, for the wise Arya, the flawless, stainless vision of the Dhamma arises. Following the arising of vision, a wise meditator has given up 3 fetters: belief in personal self, doubt in Dhamma, and adherence to blind observances and practices. Afterwards, one does away with 2 things: sensory yearning and ill will or anger. And this is actually describing the first jhana, basically. Yeah, it's like also attaining first jhana, so it's like
so the
very close. No, but
so the understanding there would be a stream enterer or Sakadagami has basically let go of the first 3 fetters. When they attain the first jhana, what does that mean when they attain the first jhana? No hindrances are present, which includes no sensual craving and no ill will. So that mind in that moment is purified of any sensual craving, purified of any kind of ill will. Therefore, in that sense, those 5 fetters are not present. And from there's a possibility that they will return back to the sensual realms.
There's even suttas where the finger snap sutta where the Buddha says that 3 suttas in a row that just someone who cultivates a mind of loving kindness is one who practices jhana. So it's quite clear.
So a finger snap of loving kindness.
Let alone one who would cultivate them. So they're said to practice jhana, practice the teacher's teaching, and they do not eat alms food in vain or as a debt. So, for the time of a finger snap, and then he says, let alone those who would actually develop this. So, for those who think that the Brahma Viharas is just like a kindergarten practice, it's actually pretty good. So yeah, and I like that they're actually talking about the fetters that are associated with anagami, and then right after they're talking about the same thing but with the jhana factors. So afterwards, one does away with 2 things: sensory yearning and ill will or anger. As one lets go of sensory engagement or yearning, and lets go of unwholesome states of mind, and then, because at that point restlessness is still possible, but it's somewhat calm because there's no more anger or sensory engagement, so that's calming it quite a bit. Still thinking and reflecting with the blissful ease that arises from letting go, one understands and abides in the first level of meditation, first jhana. At that time, monks, if the lifetime of this wise Arya were to come to its end, there are no fetters that could bind the wise meditator to return to this world again. So,
So get to stream entry at least, guys. Come on. What are you waiting for?
The spotless vision of the Dhamma. I like that.
Yeah. Any other questions, or you guys good now? Good. Where do you want to distribute these books? There's more copies, so just distribute them.
I'll take one first.
Yeah.
Concept and reality.
So anyone who didn't get a copy will get one tomorrow. There's some more. So let's share some merit.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving should all grieve, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha Sasana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.